Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick with me? Famous scenes with drama queens and heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, the popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. Noel T. Manning II here, and today we're diving into a story that reshaped the sound of America. The new PBS documentary, King of Them All, The Story of King Records, uncovers how one scrappy Cincinnati music label founded by Sid Nathan dared to do it all under one roof. Write, record, press, and ship music that broke barriers and also blended genres long before the industry was even ready for something like that to happen. Director and producer Yemi Oyediran takes us inside this musical revolution. It's where James Brown, Little Willie John, Hank Ballard, and the Stanley Brothers, and many more helped to rewrite the 20th century sound. It's a tale of creativity, of cultural courage, and community that you won't want to miss. So stick around for this interview with Yemi Oyediran. I really appreciate you taking the time. Yemi, thanks for being with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies.
No, thank you so much for having me and Meet Me at the Movies. I'm really excited about this.
I tell you, this project has been a long time coming for you, and I don't know if you want to call it a spinoff or an expansion of a previous work, but I know it's been a part of your life for a long time. I definitely want you to talk about that if you would, but before that, could you tell me the first time you remember hearing about King Records, and was there a particular moment when you knew, yeah, I've got to do this documentary?
Wow. Again, thank you for having me on. That's an excellent question. I have gone through the King Records thing, I guess, since I was really young. You know, the first time I heard James Brown and my grandmother's records in Nigeria was kind of the first time I got hip to it. And then, then I had an amazing drum teacher outside in Cleveland, a guy named Kip Volans, who day one I come into a studio and I want to learn how to play the drums, and he sits me down and starts teaching me James Brown. So I did, I want to say my sophomore and my junior year in high school were dedicated to just every James Brown song known to man, which I still have in here. And then when I moved to Cincinnati, I started playing with a lot of jazz. I play a lot of jazz in town, and I started playing with a lot of jazz musicians who would have all these stories about how James Brown still owes them money and like all this stuff that happened and how they used to, like, some people would even like, they hung out with James Brown. So after hearing all of these stories, I really wanted to find a way to start kind of putting something that kind of reflected my community together, my musical community. Yeah. And it evolved from several different projects and different things I did around the King space into this documentary.
Wow. I love how this documentary was a love letter to Cincinnati. I love your use of rare archival footage, and man, such rich footage and rich interviews, the hand-drawn animation, all of those things combined to really provide a compelling look back into a history that I think a lot of people, even people who love music, may not be aware of. So if you could, from a documentary creation standpoint, how did you decide on the style and rhythm of this final cut that we get a chance to see?
I was really inspired by several different documentaries. I'd watched just about every documentary that's out over the last several years. I have an obsessive personality type, so I basically applied what I did with music. You know, like I have been known to listen to every album that's put out by a record company and several record companies because I get obsessed by something one day. Yeah. And I applied the same type of thing to documentaries. So I just watched every documentary, music documentaries of all kinds. And I started found inspiration by different things people were doing to take viewers back in time, as it were. So I really kind of got into this idea of it'd be really cool if a documentary was almost like experiencing time travel. So every element in the documentary was going to be that it's used had to stylistically match. So if I was going to do animations or motion graphics, I wanted them to be hand drawn and handmade. So a lot of the things you see, even the collages, were done by hand and taken shot by shot, image by image, frame by frame rather, and that's what we used to generate. So the hand drawn animations were a part of that. You know, the maps and all these other things, yeah, those are all handmade. And then I wanted to match the archive footage because I really wanted to keep everything period specific. So when you see something that's in 1955, all the archive that you see is all from 1955. All throughout the rest of the film, I try to stay as consistent as possible.
That's beautiful. I love that. Absolutely love that. And it works so well. And
Thank you.
it really breathes life into this story in a way that is so authentic. And so I thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that as well.
And thank you for those kind words. Those are really, I really appreciate, that really means a lot because
No.
I wanted that to be the effect that people are left with.
Absolutely. I was blown away from this doc in a lot of different ways, and it taught me a lot. And I am a lover of music and music history, and this taught me a lot. So thank you for educating the world out there for people who even love music and feel they're a part of it. One of the things about King Records that really impressed me was breaking these sonic barriers. And there was a quote in the documentary that I love that I think is part of the tagline that says, "There's no clear sonic color line." And King Records, challenged that segregation era norm, and they brought artists together across traditional divides of the times. And what was that something that surprised you, or something that you knew about before you ever went into it?
I didn't know that about King Records. And to be fair, King wasn't the only one that brought white musicians and black musicians. That is just called American music.
Right.
It's just like from the nature, this separation is imaginary. And if you go back, I did an experiment where I listened to, I think I found some radio transmissions from like the 40s. And I went back and I listened to as much as I could, and you'd be really hard pressed to tell the difference between a white singer and a black singer. The style is very similar. Things were much more operatic back then.
Yeah.
The instrumentation, a lot of things were just a lot more similar. You really can't see the delineation that maybe somebody who was more engaged in that culture back then would have been able to tell, similar to what we have now. Today, a lot of people talk about country as more or less become hip hop. And that's fair to say. In 50 years from now, you'd be really hard pressed to tell the difference between a country song and a hip hop song, just like you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between a country song and a blues song back in the day.
Right.
Because after all, American music is country music. And it's also like R&B and hip hop and all these black styles. They are one style of music. And as a musician, that's something that I picked up on very quickly. As a drummer, especially, there is no genre when it comes to the drums. So that's the way I approach music. Hearing that that was from Dr. Tammy Kernoodle, who is a famed musicologist. But somebody who also said that, and we didn't use his version, was Vince Gill. Vince Gill and we went into like really deep details as to why genre doesn't exist. And it was really fascinating to hear from a 22-time Grammy nominated artist like Vince Gill about how genre is imaginary and how he approaches it and all the different ways that country music and R&B are the same. And he just showed it right there on his guitar. It was fascinating that I got to see, and hopefully one day I'll be able to share that in some way with other people.
Yeah, it's amazing how society wants to place labels on things that don't need labels. I appreciate what you have done with that. And I am going to ask you a question about genre, because rock and roll is one of those labels that's been around for a long time. And after watching your documentary, I've kind of changed my thoughts on some things. And your research made me wonder, do you think Cincinnati could have been the birthplace of rock and roll? And how do you feel about that as you've done this deep dive?
Wow, way to jump into a not controversial topic at all, Noel. Let's go. Let's get into it. So I do believe that Cincinnati is one of the birthplaces of rock and roll. I believe that the American Midwest and the river cities of American Midwest are the birthplaces of rock and roll. And you have those types of connections that are happening across the waterways. And it's really those inland waterways that and the communication that's happening between those cultures and communities that's really creating this style. But one of the reasons that I think that rock, a lot of people identify Memphis as the birthplace of rock and roll. And Memphis does definitely have its place. And I don't want to ever take any away from Memphis. A lot of great music came out of Sun Records and Stax. But, in the South at the time, if you were to get some music in 1943, 1947, when Good Rockin' Tonight was recorded, getting African American musicians and white musicians in the same room is kind of illegal at that point in time in the South. So it really can't be the South. And the first community that you have, where you have the ability of being able to have white and black musicians, kind of being able to have exchange of ideas, as well also you have populaces that are able to purchase freely, is really the Cincinnati area and these kind of racial border towns. So it makes Cincinnati kind of a key place because it's kind of the first place in the middle of the Appalachian migration and the African American migration. While all this is happening post World War II, all of these things are kind of converging into one thing that give opportunity. And Cincinnati is one of the first places this happened. But with the birthplace of rock and roll, there's other songs that are considered birthplaces of rock and roll. A lot of them are from King Records. And that's because of Henry Glover. Henry Glover is this critical figure that really starts to help turn rock, jump blues into this new style. King missed the mark, though, by marketing and advertising towards adults and not teenagers. And that's kind of why Sun really does a good job of getting the emerging teenage market, which wasn't a thing in the late 1940s. But Sun just basically follows the exact musicology of rock and roll that we show in the film with Good Rockin' Tonight. And we see that happening with Sun.
Yeah, you've talked about Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is again such a beautiful reflection within this documentary. And I'd love for you to talk about what role that the local community of Cincinnati has played in keeping the legacy alive. And how did you want to honor that with celebrating your place, a place that you have called home?
The whole film is really about honoring my hometown, my adopted hometown. There's a lot of incredible things that happen in Cincinnati. It's a very fantastic musical community. We have one of the best music schools in the country here, which lends itself to having a lot of great artists. And that's historically been a thing in Cincinnati. When the big acts like Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington, they would purposely put tours to come through Cincinnati, because when you'd lose, you'd fire musicians on the road. Sometimes they party too hard or they're late to something, or something happens and you've got to replace people. Cincinnati was always a place that people on the Chitlin circuit would come through to basically restaff their band. So Cincinnati's had this long history of having just great, excellent sidemen and musicians. And so this community, I get to play with some of the best musicians in the world. There's some people who went to school here or who grew up here, and they've gone on to do incredible things around that we're hearing, like in our regular music making space and around the world in music. And I wanted to find some way of being able to show that, it's not a comeback. Cincinnati's always been here. Cincinnati's always been in the mix in American music. And this is the case for other river towns as well.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you, Yemi, for spending time with us. But before we wrap, as viewers watch King of Them All, what would you hope that they can feel, that they can learn, or maybe even think differently about music and music history?
America as we know it was constructed in very complicated ways. It wasn't kind of a single shot. We did this, then we did this. We didn't come to racial integration through one single avenue. It was happening in music. It was happening in business. It was happening in all kinds of ways. And I wanted to find something that was easy and approachable for people to look at one example of how people come together. But I also hope that people can kind of think about other ways that we can come together as a country. Right now, everything's so divisive, and it's frustrating to see because we've solved all of these problems before and we found ways of doing it. And, you know, playing music together and finding ways to interact with other people who necessarily don't look like you or agree with you or anything is only going to lead towards creating a more perfect union or a more perfect record, or in my case, a more perfect film. Whatever it is we're doing, it can only be improved by getting all of us together and figuring it out. You know, it's going to be awkward. There's going to be maybe some raised voices, but I'm from Nigeria. The truth doesn't hurt my feelings, and I have no problem hearing anything from anybody. And, you know, that's one thing that I bring to the table culturally, that you can cuss me out and I'm going to still give you a hug at the end of the conversation.
I love it.
I think that, you know, if we're able to kind of come with a certain attitude, you're going to find that excellence will be created. And if we want to create a more perfect union, I think it's going to be, you know, everybody getting over hurt feelings.
Well, Yemi, if I were there, man, I'd be giving you a hug. I just want you to know that right now, man. Hey, thank you so much. And thank you for this reminder that music is a bridge. And it is truly a bridge. And this documentary spoke that in volumes. So thank you for that. And thanks for joining us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. Any final thoughts you want to make sure you share?
No, again, other than reiterating that please, as James Brown would say, watch this film. There are other ways on streaming apps. The PBS streaming app, as well as pbs.org, would be a great place to find it. And, you know, reach out if you want to have me come to your town and bore you half to death about music history. I would love to do that. I would love to be able to share this film and all the other stories around it in so many other ways.
Yemi, thanks so much for joining us right here on Meet the Movies. I appreciate it. A huge thank you again to Yemi Oyediran for sharing his vision and passion for preserving the story of King Records. The documentary, King of Them All, premieres on PBS October 10th. It's a perfect watch for anyone who loves music, who loves history, and who loves the art of fearless innovation. Stick around. After this quick intermission, we're going to come back with more right here on Meet Me at the Movies.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Washington Outreach Ministries is one of the largest emergency food pantry in Cleveland County. We feed about 15,000 people a month. We have bi-weekly distribution every other Friday, and we serve them with all type of product, not just food product, but all type of necessities. Anything that they need, we have here and we can supply it. Food is available every day, but we offer bi-weekly distribution so the mass of Cleveland County can come through and enjoy some of the food products that we have here.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hey there, and welcome into EOM Presents. This is Thomas Manning, senior interviewer for Elements Madness, and today I'm talking with Ben Leonberg, director and co-writer of Good Boy, which is a film that I'm sure has crossed your radar if you keep up with anything related to the horror genre. But for those of you who are not familiar, it's a horror film told from the emotional perspective of a dog as the main protagonist. So I think that's really all I need to pitch you on this film and this conversation. So hope you all enjoyed this interview talking with filmmaker Ben Leonberg about Good Boy. Thanks for watching and listening.
I was actually going to say, if you're all interested to see, the Good Boy himself is right there.
There's the star. Oh my goodness. Is Indy that's his name in real life, right?
That is his name in real life. We named the dog Indiana.
I love it. It's beautiful. So do you have a connection to Indiana, or where was the
No, it's he's named for the famous globetrotting archaeologist.
Well, yeah, that too. The second most famous Indiana, I guess. So
Yep. Yeah.
Love it.
Indy, or he's Indy for indie film, which this certainly was.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time today and glad we could fit it in. I know you've been all over the place and pretty crazy rollout for this film, it sounds like, but yeah, really
Yeah.
happy to have you here.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I mean, it's been a wild ride. You know, we made this movie not expecting any of this, and I mean, we always thought the idea was really good, and we're really happy that the internet and the world seems to have responded so strongly, and a lot of people are hopefully going to be able to get to see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll head right into it, asking about the home video montage that we have at the beginning of the film. I
Mhm.
assume that was just stuff that you shot over the years and then realized that you could incorporate. So I'm curious what that moment of realization was for you when it clicked that, oh wow, I have this gold mine of, that I can use for a montage to right off the bat create this emotional connection and depict a years long journey just right here within a minute.
Yeah, I mean, so we certainly didn't know that Indy was going to be the star of the show when we started writing the movie. That came later after I was making these test films before I started, before I'd even finished the script to learn how to work with him. But once we get into the actual filmmaking, we realize there's this big opportunity when, just by nature of his height, most of the humans in the film are going to be cropped, so we never see their faces. We'll see their legs and hands, and from like the neck or chest down. And there's a big advantage there because that means, part of the reason the way we learned to work with Indy is that my wife and I were the ones who coached him or, suss out his performance. That meant since our faces didn't have to be in the film because we are not actors, we could be the stand-ins with him on set, and it's our bodies with actors' voices coming out that, play the characters, which is kind of a very odd way to approach a film, but I guess makes sense when you're making a dog movie. Since we weren't going to have other people in the movie, we looked at all the home movie footage and thought this is an amazing way to just instantly get the audience on your main character's side. I think it would work even without the home movie footage, but something I've noticed in screenings I've been to is that as soon as the movie starts, the first shot is of Indy asleep on a couch, and audiences go, "Aw." The first 10 minutes that most films have to spend convincing you to root for the hero, we just skip that. And then we go from there to, you thought that was good. Here's that same dog, but as a puppy. We twist the knife as much as we can. It's almost like cheating.
Yeah. And you mentioned pretty much hiding the actors' faces for the entire film, and you consistently find creative ways to do so, but it didn't feel like a gimmick. It just felt situationally natural. So was that a challenge for you to kind of walk that tightrope and have it feel like an organic part of the world rather than something contrived or something a little bit forced?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really do think it was like a combination of a creative and a practical choice. Because we wanted to anchor the perspective with Indy, that meant that the camera is on his level. We're seeing the film unfold through point of view and objective shots, shot, reverse shot, which means the camera is going to be really low to the ground with him. So, like as I said before, that naturally crops people where we just see their legs or just like parts of them in the background. We really embraced that as like the creative aesthetic. There were some really fun practical challenges we had to learn how to like embrace. There's certain times where we had to light things in a way once we've decided that this is the vibe we're going for, that we don't want to show the people's faces. We need to essentially, I need to light my own face so my features aren't quite shown, but you still can see me in the background with a little bit of backlight, but my features are hidden. It's all meant to reflect how a dog might see the world. And yeah, it was certainly fun to try and execute.
And on some of the shots that were lower to the ground, there's one scene in particular where it's handheld shaky cam and it's right on Indy's level. I'm just curious what that setup looked like. Was the camera operator just holding the camera very low to the ground, or was he crawling with it like that?
Yeah.
I just had a vision in my head of camera guy just army crawling with it.
Yeah, I mean it's my back is paying for it still probably, but it's kind of the way like you would see kids. I mean, I grew up doing this, shooting skateboard videos where they hold the camera by a handle on the top and the camera's real low, and I'm just kind of hunched over, hovering the camera behind him as we're following him around. Fortunately, I have long arms, and to Indy's credit, he certainly did not know he was in a movie. But he did learn to just accept that the camera was around him. I think he knew what it was, but he, wouldn't try and interact or play with it. Although I will say his nose made contact with the lens many times throughout filming. So that actually slowed things down quite a bit. Of just nose contact with camera was a near constant, risk.
Yeah, yeah. So were you basically the DP on this film as well? Because I didn't notice a DP in the credits and wondered if I missed somebody or he just
No,
left your name
that's
out.
correct. So yeah, so it was the majority of principal photography, which was just me, my wife, and my dog. That was our house we lived in, so we also decorated it. We had the advice of a production designer who builds the cave and portal to the afterlife you see in the finale. But we wore a lot of hats. My wife is the producer. I was the director, co-writer, co-producer, or also a producer. I was electrician, carpenter, DP, gaffer, grip, best boy, animal trainer. Also, I stood in, so I'm in the movie. It was this is not a normal way to make a movie. I was frequently setting the camera up, turning it on, rolling it, getting the lights just so, calling Indy, walking in front of the camera, doing something for his benefit that plausibly would be what the actor would voice, and then running back, checking the shot, trying it a few more times. It's kind of maybe what I learned as a kid making movies, where you do that kind of filmmaking probably was useful, similar to the skateboard videos. So it's not a normal way to make a movie, but it worked for us.
Yeah, yeah. And I think when you get down to the core of the film, it's about how the scariest thing for a dog is to see its person, its human in pain and not knowing how to fix it or not having the ability to fix it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious for you, did you begin with that theme and then craft the film around that, or did you find that theme from the seed of developing a horror film from the perspective of a dog? Which of those came first?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. We landed on the idea that, characters, any kind of character, is supposed to have a want or a need that motivates them throughout the story. And we determined really early on an advantage of working with a dog is that the relationship they have to their person is really uncomplicated and really easy to understand. Nobody questions, why do these two characters like each other? The dog and the guy clearly are best friends. The dog loves this guy. That's not a stretch. You don't need to explain that. The movie can just start. So one of the arcs we were always trying to track is that, you see this in the movie, all Indy wants to do is be close to Todd, physically. And that's a really easy thing to show visually. There's times where Indy is left home alone in the house and we see he's very upset to be left alone. And then when Todd comes back, he's happy, but Todd isn't doing so well. So it's like their closeness is like a way to create an arc for, this character who can't speak and doesn't have dialogue. You'll notice that the worst thing that can happen to Indy, at the second act climax, where the worst thing typically happens to any character in a movie, is he's chained up outside and separated from his person. So that was one relationship that we realized was, it was easy to explain visually. Maybe not easy, but it was intuitive to understand. So that was a big realization that helped us in crafting the full narrative.
Yeah. And as far as that bond between Indy and Todd, I guess for Indy, it's Indy and Shane Jensen.
Yes.
I bought that immediately. How much did they have to spend a lot of time together to build that, or what did that look like?
So that's where it's another trick of the filmmaking. The person Indy is acting with on set is me.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason the love looks so genuine and real is that it's for Indy. He can't fake that. He's a method actor in a way that humans could only dream. So you see that real relationship is that's because the person's body is mine. Shane is adding the performance the same way James Earl Jones adds Darth Vader to the guy in the suit from Star Wars.
Man, that's awesome. Oh, Ben, well, really congrats on the film, and really happy that I think it's getting a much wider release than originally anticipated, so congrats on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well deserved, and I'm glad that people nationwide are going to be able to see it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really pleasure. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll stay in touch, and I hope to share more conversations in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Bad ones, many films to view till we meet again.